Something that adds so much trauma to my life is just how frustrating becoming an architect is. And that's why I made this list of the 6 cons of becoming an architect. The first con is how expensive becoming an architect is. And I'm not even talking about school. School's expensive as heck. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about all the other costs associated with becoming an architect. For example, model making. When you're going to school, you're going to have to buy a lot of stuff to make models. And these models represent the designs that you're working on. And guess what? You're not doing one design a semester. You're doing like 3 to 6 designs every semester, and each design requires over 10 models for you to make. In some cases, as much as 40 models, and that's a true story. But anyway, guess what? You're not making these things out of paper. You're making them out of whatever material the teacher decides that they're going to want to make now. And guess what? They have very expensive tastes. For example, mahogany wood. That stuff is expensive as hell, and teachers always tell you to buy either basswood or some sort of metal or plaster of Paris, whatever they can come up with. They decide for you to buy that stuff, make models out of it, and it's coming out of your own pocket. And guess what? They're not gonna like those models ever. There's like a 99% chance that they're not gonna like the stuff that you make, and they're gonna trash it, and then you're gonna have to start all over. And guess what? If you don't like it, well, there's a door. You know, it sucks. And guess what? You're gonna need really expensive tech, specifically a good computer. It could be a laptop or a desktop. It's gotta have a really powerful hard drive, and it's gotta have a lot of RAM and tons of solid state drive memory. Guess what? All that stuff adds up. Basically, your computer is gonna have to be good enough to run the latest video game at the highest settings, okay? That's how expensive we're talking. And that stuff gets outdated real quick. New programs require more power from your computer, and therefore you're gonna need to constantly upgrade your computer or get better ones. It's really expensive. Next is one of my favorite expenses, which is licensing. Licensing requires you to take a bunch of exams to become an architect. And guess what? Everything that you learned at school and everything that you're learning at work, I would say probably like 10% of that applies into these tests. You're gonna have to buy books and possibly online courses to teach you more about the business of architecture, structural, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and how buildings are put together. Pretty much all this stuff that you never learned in school and are not really working on at work anyway. So guess what? It's gonna be hard, and you're gonna have to buy all those things, and plus you're gonna have to pay for those tests. And if you fail any of them, which is so probable, you're gonna have to pay for that too. And then of course, all the software that you're gonna need. And I'm not talking about 1 or 2 programs here. I'm talking about dozens of programs that you're gonna need. Here are a few: AutoCAD, Revit, Maya, Rhino, Photoshop, InDesign. I named 6. There's probably like 6 to 20 more that you're gonna need. Now, you don't need to know all of these programs. It's okay to only know a few of them, but basically the more that you know, the better for your career. And the reason that you need all these programs is because you need a program to make the actual plans, and you need another one to make the model, then you need another one to render the model, and then you need another one to make all that stuff that you just worked on nice and pretty into a canvas to show your clients. And each of these little programs comes with, guess what? Subscriptions. That's right. And you're gonna have to pay for every single subscription and or purchase the actual program itself. And some of these programs are getting kind of sneaky, where they make you buy the program, and then next year they kind of make you buy another add-on for that program, but they give you a discount, don't worry. But anyway, it's expensive as hell. Con number 2 is the fact that you can never master architecture. Now, I know some of you guys are like, oh my God, that sounds amazing. I'll never stop learning. Yes, it does sound nice, but when you apply that, it's actually not nice at all. You know why? Because you will always feel like you don't know enough. So when you leave school with this feeling like you accomplished something, and then you get to work and you're like, well, I don't know any of this stuff. And so then you rely on everybody around you to teach you stuff, but they're also trying to learn stuff that they haven't learned yet. So it can get a little crazy. But the point is that it's not easy to learn. You're gonna have to be on top of all the mechanical, electrical, plumbing, structural stuff that you're gonna be learning. Then you're also gonna have to know about detailing projects, because it's not only how you design them, it's how you detail them, how you put these buildings together, and making sure that they're safe for everybody that's inside them. And guess what? There's a lot of learning to do, so it can get very frustrating really fast. Now, con number 3, remember that little thing that I talked about a few minutes ago, talking about the license? Yeah, that's con number 3. The fact that if you want to even be called an architect, you need a license. You can go to school, graduate, you can get your master's degree in architecture. You're not an architect. You're not an architect until you get your license. And getting your license, as I mentioned before, is expensive. It also requires a lot of time. It requires you to do, I think, over 3,000 hours working at a firm supervised by a mentor, making sure that you're learning certain things. And then on top of that, it of course requires a degree from an accredited school. Now, once you check off each one of these boxes, you can go and take your test. But a lot of people get very discouraged from this, and so they decide to not even get their license at all. So they've been working 10 or 20 years in the field. They know so much about it, but guess what? They're not architects. They can call themselves design professionals or architectural associates. That's legally, at least. It just doesn't sound as nice as architect. Now, con number 4 is the fact that architects don't even get paid well. Now, if you look online, you'll find that they range anywhere from $35,000 all the way to around $120,000. 35 being fresh out of school. Those aren't usually architects. Those are usually drafters. So you could bump that up to around 50 to 60 for an architect. That's a licensed architect, all the way to 120, more or less. Those are averages. And that might sound nice to some of you guys, but you don't realize the amount of things that architects are responsible for. Like I mentioned before, they're not only responsible for designing and making things look pretty, they're in charge of coordinating the whole entire project, making sure that all the consultants are doing things that meet the requirements of the project itself, and also making sure that the project meets the demands of the code, and also making sure that the client is happy and the client is happy. You know what I'm talking about? So when you mix all these ingredients together, you realize that an architect just has so many responsibilities, and when they get their paycheck at the end of the month, they're like, yeah, this should be like 10 times what I'm getting paid because of the amount of responsibility that I have. And I haven't even started talking about lawsuits. Finally, the last con on this list is one of my favorites, is the simple fact that an architect doesn't even get to design that much. Now try this. Next time you go for a walk around your neighborhood or drive, look at around all the buildings that are going up, all these new buildings. There's not many of them. Now there might be some renovations that architects are in charge of. That's fine. But the point is that there's not much design going on. Sure, it's fun to design a building, but that happens like for 1% of the time of the life of that building. Everything else is spent on coordination, making sure that things are going right, making sure that this product fits here and that this can go there. And it's all coordination and planning and budgeting. And it's like, literally, that's like 99% of the project. And then 1% is the actual design. So if you're thinking like, oh, I'm going to get to design all the best stuff in the world, it's like, no, there's probably one person in the whole firm that does that. And then they have a small team that reviews that. And yeah, maybe you'll be lucky and you'll be that person. But guess what? You're not just going to go there. Let's say the firm has 100 projects and you could knock out 100 designs in a month, right? Because if you have a team that's like making all the plans for you, you don't even have to worry about any of that stuff. You just make things look pretty. In 1 month, you can knock out 100 projects. You think they're going to pay you just to sit there and just I finished my work. Now I'm just going to, I don't know, come in and have a good time. No, they're not going to pay you for that. So guess what? You're not going to be spending the majority of the time designing. An architect doesn't do that. An architect spends most of their time coordinating and planning and budgeting. And so that is sad. It's really sad. But if you're feeling a little discouraged, don't feel that bad, because I have another video where I talk about all the pros of becoming an architect, and there are a few, so check it out.